Welcome, everybody, to another fabulous Real Talk podcast with Richard Smith, Vice President of ERAI.
Rob, how you been? Good to see you again. Thanks for having me back.
Good to see you. It's been probably 9 months since we last talked.
10, actually.
10 months. And,
time flies.
Yeah, but it's funny. Time flies, but in 10 months, things change a lot again. You know, we first went through a pandemic when we first talked. Now we're kind of being post-pandemic, but a lot in the supply chain, electronics has changed within the last 10 months.
Right. We can always count on the supply chain chaos to bring us some new challenges. And we have a lot of that going on in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah. So why don't you give me a little, tell the audience a little about who is ERAI and what do you guys do?
Well, ERAI was formed in 1995 as an industry association to basically clean up, police, and promote the electronic component industry to the manufacturing community. And back in 95, most of the incidents that we tracked and reported on were just bad business practices. Then in the year 2000, we got our first report of a counterfeited integrated circuit. And since then, we've put together the largest database of counterfeit and non-conforming electronic components, and companies reported for having shipped them. So our databases and robust search tools provide business, industry, and governments the intelligence they need to navigate the supply chain to avoid problematic parts and problematic companies, whether these companies be vendors or customers.
Yes, I cannot agree. And as being a member for probably 20 plus years with ERAI, you guys have been a great partner, a resource, a tool for the mitigation of the counterfeit avoidance in the market and also the supplier base. And it's been, you guys have done a lot in it from our last podcast we had, we went over a lot of that. So one thing, let's fast forward now and go over from where, a question for you now, in the last 10 months, what has changed?
Well, we see certainly counterfeiting holding its own. We don't have the numbers out yet for the first half of this year in relation to last year, but we have a steady flow of counterfeit product being reported to us. The big changes I see are the market segments and industries and companies that are coming to ERAI because they're experiencing problems they have not experienced in the past. That is driven by first-time experiences with counterfeit product, and we're seeing a big increase in wire fraud. Wire fraud is driving a lot of companies to us. Here's the story typically, and this happens every single day. Professional purchasing group goes to manufacturing and says, we can't get this product in the time that you need it, so you're going to have to redesign, approve another device, or reschedule manufacturing, whatever the case may be. Someone goes and does an online search and they come back and say, look, I found the parts with this company, place the order. The professional purchasing group places the order and learns that the terms are wire transfer in advance. Well, everyone's scrambling, so management says, yeah, send them the money, and they do, and then all conversation with that company ceases. So the company never gets the product, so they don't even have an opportunity to see if it's counterfeit, and they don't get a refund. And that is happening a great deal. Those are two of the big changes that we see. Yeah, businesses and industries experiencing counterfeit for the first time, unlike defense and aerospace, who got on this in the early 2000s. You know, by 2008, there were a lot of policies and programs in place. Yeah. And then the wire fraud is affecting everyone right now.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a lot of points there between, there's a lot of factors of why this is happening between the supply chain. But now going to this, I want to start with the wire fraud and double down on that a little bit to understand the process. Because what we've experienced and what we've seen is these are very elaborate schemes. They're not just wire fraud, we have a component. These people make a very elaborate websites that look very credible, and they actually respond quickly. So can you give us a little bit of about that and what you've seen and what you investigated, how intricate this is getting?
Well, there are certainly the individuals who just set out to defraud, and if they can get something to quote and get you to place an order and have you wire the money. Some of these have evolved into large global criminal enterprises. There's a large one out of Asia. Covers dozens and dozens of web stores, really slick-looking web stores. There's a major wire fraud ring operating in the United States and other places. ERAI has put out a couple of blogs covering this, and anyone, ERAI member or not, can go to the public page at erai.com, scroll to the bottom, and there are 2 blogs over the last couple of months that we put out that detail a couple of these operations. They are very elaborate schemes. Really, we call them slick-looking web stores. Everything looks great. They have photos, but there are a couple of red flags that we can look for. Typically, if they have product that no other major supplier has, that should cause you to ask a couple of questions. And we see as an enticement to get you to place the order, they're quoting well below market prices or prices that you've seen before. Those are 2 things that right off the bat should cause some concern. So you have to do your investigation, your vetting, your due diligence, and if you have the opportunity, check the ERAI website to see if the company's been reported before.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I mean, it's just the information, and today it's easier to, I would say, impersonate a lot of companies. Easier to put yourself out there, just like you kind of hit it there. You have first the email kind of fraud. People send requirements in for prod and try to get terms or try to act as another company with a website address that's similar with a different letter or digit or whatever they use, and to the naked eye, people don't realize it. They think it's legitimate, and that's one case of that wire fraud. And just come to that is people who make that elaborate schemes and those whole schemes.
Yeah, watch your web address extensions, com, org, or IN if it's calling out a country or something, because everything else could be identical, but just that extension. So a lot of things that you can look for.
Yeah, jumping to the big factor of all this type of fraud that's being it's increasing or staying it's open in the market is because the supply chain shortage that's come in the last, I would say, since we last talked. Things have increased 10 times into the time of shortages and component needs globally.
Shortages are certainly one of the major drivers of counterfeit activity. It's not exclusive. There is some correlation between part shortages and counterfeits. Last year, I think you and I may have talked about this before, we took a date and time in late 2019 and went back to the last 1,000 or 100 actually parts that have been reported. And at that time, half of those reported parts were obsolete and the others were available through franchise supply chain. Add into that shortages, and that those numbers adjust a little bit. So shortages will drive people into the secondary market, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. As you well know, there are some excellent secondary market companies. Some of them are as good as it gets, and they've been providing a service to the industry going back really to the 1930s or 40s. So for decades, the secondary market has thrived and provided many services that the franchise supply chain simply can't or doesn't. The problem is some of the people going into that marketplace for the first time don't have the experience on vetting a vendor. So anything they see online, they assume that it's good. And you have to use your best practices. You have to have policies in place on how to vet a vendor correctly. And ERAI member companies, I always promote them as a pool of pre-screen vendors. All of the distributor, reseller, ERAI members have been well vetted by us. They've been in business for more than 1 year. They've been well vetted by us in that we have checked 6 customer and 6 supplier references, all positive. We've done a cursory financial investigation to see that they're solvent. We have checked the legal and public record databases in whatever country or state they reside in, looking for things like ownership, problems, lawsuits, bankruptcies, things you'd be interested in. And they have no complaints against them in the marketplace because that would preclude them from being an ERAI member.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of checks and balances ERA does for policing of that, and I really thank you guys of what you guys done to the marketplace. Now, getting back to some of these the shortages and problem that's really it's quantifying itself in the next years, and we can see that's out. What are the information, and to your ears to the ground? You're talking to a lot of C-levels and professionals, and suppliers and manufacturers out there. What are you hearing? What's going on? I mean, we know the global for everyone's in the media, but what have you heard out there? And what is as common, but what is very surprising that's not as disclosed by the media?
Well, as you know, the industry has experienced shortages off and on multiple times for decades. And a shortage, and I hate to sound oversimplified, but it's always where demand exceeds production or availability. And there are a lot of causes for that. If you remember back in the 90s, the surface mount shortage was caused by a fire at a Japanese factory because they provided something in the neighborhood of 80% of all the chemical compound needed to make plastic packages for integrated circuits. So that created a shortage. Prior to that, there was the mil-spec 38999 circular military connector shortage, and that was based on production shortage and machine shops and things like that. We've gone through DRAM shortages, and those have been primarily driven by demand. Everybody wants the latest DRAM. So currently, the shortages are an issue of production being able to meet demand. And I can't say that it was a lack of planning on anyone's part, but demand has skyrocketed for a lot of material across the board. And manufacturers are increasing capacity. They're allocating material, trying to spread it around. There's a lot of things being done to try and reel that back in, but the industry ultimately always catches up. Now, depending on who you've talked to, I hear that we should see some easing up of lead times. It could be as early as this year. Many people, in my personal opinion, is that it'll be well into 2022 before we start to catch up.
I mean, the pandemic, the pandemic surge kind of snapped that, and then the snapback effect of all the usage, and of course, the whole world tried to come back. A lot of pent up demand, electronics, the technology. As I always say, we're in a technology revolution in this. We were in it, but the pandemic has accelerated that to how we communicate, how we work from home, the processes, the cloud-based systems, the AI systems, the computers. The more microcontrollers and components needed, the more electronics needed to power that system. And
right, there are several articles written about how the pandemic affected this. And automotive guys, when the pandemic started, it's written that they kind of backed off on ordering because they didn't think they were going to sell cars. But what increased was all the consumer electronics, the home goods, the video cards, the cyber currency mining add-in cards, and the games and the computers and all the technology you had to add at your home office. So that took up a lot of product. That was a big surge in demand. And then when automotive turned back on, a lot of the original component manufacturers, it takes some time to change gears and produce different products for different marketplaces. And I have confidence that they will catch up because I look back over my 40 years in this business, and they always have ultimately.
Of course, I mean, there's cycles, and we're in a kind of there are a lot of terms, super cycle. We're in some type of cycle that it is. But nobody's, as we all know, nobody's seen anything like this with this demand. But of course, countries are, as you say, are printing money, stimulus to counteract the COVID and the crisis. A lot more money is going to the marketplace. A lot more infrastructure building. A lot of that's coming in, and it's causing that surge. There's a positive to all of this as well that's coming out, that we are evolving ourselves into a new decade. The 2020s are a new decade.
I talk to purchasing professionals every day. Some of them are longtime players like myself, and it's very common for us to talk about how we've never seen what I call the supply chain chaos that we're experiencing now. But if I think back, every supply chain issue over the last 40 years was fairly new at that time. And the industry, with all the movers and players and really sharp people in this business, they adjust and adapt and they get things done. And production will continue, revenues will continue to be generated, and we've always found a way to overcome these issues. And ERAI is just there to help out and be a piece of providing information to help people overcome the challenges.
Yeah, so that's why that takes a jump. I would like to jump into this and go over basically the ERAI, some of these things we go over. I'm going to do a little quick screen share for you and go over the basics of the ERAI website and the values and resources that ERAI has for public and for its users. So let me click on.
I didn't know this was coming. I like it. This looks like one of the demos that I do every day.
Yeah, so of course, do you want to quickly go over the view of all the amenities, like what you start from seeing as a viewer coming to your website?
Well, right on our homepage, there's a lot of information. If you were to scroll to the bottom, as you go through, Intercept there is an internal division of ERAI, and that's a training and certification course designed to train component inspectors. And the successful students will learn to make an accept-reject decision on a wide range of components using the inspection and testing techniques taught in that class. And right in the middle there is a 2-minute video. Anyone that has an interest can look at that and see what that's all about. If you continue down the homepage, there are the 2 blogs that I mentioned dealing with the wire fraud and the internet scams. I suggest everybody read those, because some of them list in detail some of the companies that are involved, so you can avoid some potential problems.
You can click
just right there from our homepage.
Yeah, we click right into them. I mean, this is public information.
Take a look at one for sure.
Yeah, it's a public information.
Here's an article. It's a little small on my screen, but I know that basically it talks about some specifics in the wire fraud, and then you see a listing of all these companies that are all connected. These companies are related through shared bank accounts, shared IP addresses, and every line item that you see there is one of those slick-looking web stores that we've talked about. And there's a lot of information there that you can use to avoid a potential problem of sending money and never receiving a refund or your product.
I mean, as a user, I can give an expectation. I mean, this information is kind of priceless to our supply chain team and to the team that's going out trying to uncover the resources for the stock, because we have a line down and trying to find another basically open market inventory. Sure. This is
you said priceless. If I could ask you to scroll down, you're going to see rather far into the article. You will see some
incidents.
Yeah, and in red are the dollar amounts of these specific incidents that people lost. Some of them are substantial, and some of them are not so big. $100, $450. Some of them are several $1,000s. But the point is, to the fraudsters, the money is all one way. So it doesn't matter to them if it's a $50 order or $40,000 order. It's all going to go to them, and they're not going to provide any material, and they're not going to give you a refund.
Yeah. I mean,
now, ERAI works with law enforcement all over the world, so this is not something that we're just taking on the chin. Things are being done. That's at a different level in the company, but we have people that are involved with law enforcement and trying to do something about these criminal rings.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it here. I mean, you got stuff all the way up to April of 2021, which is a few months ago, of these 32,000. I mean, these are big losses and fraud that have
Right.
happened is these companies. And that, I mean, you give all the information, that the risk indicators, the target of the scam, and how it works, and you tell the story of the whole process. And this, as I said, this is some priceless information for professional buyers out there in the supply chain to be able to understand how this works, to give them that resource and that knowledge to make sure they can protect themselves.
Right. And what really hurts is many of these could have been avoided had someone just checked out their vendor ahead of time before sending the money.
I mean, you told the whole story here, so this is excellent. Well, let's just jump back to the main page and to some of the other resources that I'd love to get over with you to
Sure.
Intercept, past Intercept. We have the blogs, and you guys have newsletters.
Head back to the top of the page, if you would, and go to our toolbox tab. And there's we've talked about training and events, a little training already. We have an exhaustive glossary of terms. Now, when I was in distribution, I used to use this all the time. And someone would come to me and say, I have a customer who wants to know for AS5553A, what does that mean? And I would send them to the ERAI glossary of terms, the idea being if they looked it up and read it, they would never forget it. If I told them, oftentimes it would go in one ear and out the other. So you can use this for your own information, resolving disputes between you and a customer or you and a vendor, contract language. There's a lot of good information there that covers all the buzzwords and alphabet soup and acronyms that we use, the standards that we use, the definitions of various components and the condition of those components. So that's it's a valuable resource, and it's nice to have it there in one spot. If you would go to our counterfeit awareness tab right there and scroll down to where in the gray box it says screening for counterfeits. That is our document on how to screen for or detect a counterfeit device. And it's based on the IDEA 1010 standard. There's a link in the middle where you can download the PDF, post it with your incoming inspectors or quality people. And what you're scrolling through is what it is. And it's a checklist, starting with the simplest visual inspection. And you work your way up the checklist to more complex, high-level inspection and testing techniques, some of which may require either an investment in equipment or perhaps hiring the services of one of the many third-party test labs in the marketplace. The final thing I'd like to show you, if you would back out of that, is our awareness timeline. And that would be down in the gray area, first one, awareness timeline. And this is just a rolling history of all the events, occurrences, escapements, committee formations, standard publications, the U.S. Senate Armed Service Committee hearings, which gave us Section 818A of the National Defense Authorization Act. And that's where all the DFARs that we're dealing with came from. There are some high-level prosecutions in here. All the events that have occurred around the world in the global fight against counterfeiting. This information comes from the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.K. Ministry of Defense, NASA, SAE, various other government and standards bodies. My point so far, everything I've mentioned is available right on our public page. You do not have to be an ERAI member to access what you've seen so far. If one would take the time to read all the information available right on our homepage, you can become an expert in supplier part risk mitigation. And that's really what we want. We want a lot of people out there aware and knowledgeable about supplier part risk mitigation to protect the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot say how much this helps us. As our company, we've been in business 40 years. no matter what, we're learning every day. There are resources and companies like yourself, especially association. ERAI is a very valuable legend in the industry of how you've helped avoid counterfeit and fraud mitigation into the supply chain. And I can say this is from a user. I mean, I could do a quick thing as a user. What we do and how our protocols are set is when we get a new supplier or anything comes around, the first thing we do is everybody logs into ERAI.
Good.
And the first thing we do, we go down to here. Okay, let's do a company search. You know, that's the first thing that we do. Not to give away a bunch to a lot of users, but this is really what we do. And it's very simple. And you get it right in here. You put the company name, IBS Electronics right in here. I could put IBS Electronics and click on that and a quick search. And it takes about 3 to 5 seconds and it will load here and it'll give me any information about the company.
Let me pause right here.
Yeah.
This is the layout of all our company data. It starts with a single line: the company name, location, contact information. You are obviously an ERAI member. You can access the company webpage from here. 0 A's. A is an alert. An alert is a high-level event where one can read the incident report and clearly see that a loss has been incurred by one or more of the parties. A dispute, which you have 0, is a low-level event. Typically, that's something like, I ordered red ones, but I received blue ones. And when I called to return the blue ones, the person on the phone was rude to me. That's the nature of most disputes. AI is archived information. Archived information can be either an alert or a dispute that has been resolved. We archive it, but still allow you a visibility because the incident may have an impact on your business or your relationship with the company. Now, if you would click on the company name, we're going to give you all the additional information that we have: AKAs and aliases, how long you've been in business, how long you've been members of our organization, Dun & Bradstreet number, cage code when applicable, your VAT or tax number, depending on your taxing authority, would be there. Quality certifications. Now, this is interesting because all of our data is well vetted. If we list a quality cert, we don't just allow a company to fill out a questionnaire and tell us they have this AS9120 cert. If we list it there, there will be a digital image of the certificate attached at the bottom of the profile. Continuing with the company description.
I'm actually glad we're doing this because I see we're missing our AS6081 in here. I'm doing an audit in here.
You need to send it to us. We'll get it added.
This is a great
post-haste.
So,
contact information with addresses, phone numbers, web addresses, email addresses, anything anyone would need to contact IBS at any of your global locations.
Yeah, all our offices are in here. You guys have most of all our information and some of the leaders of those operations and their information. And we go all the way down to the bottom of this.
And the bottom, yeah. We should see your certificates right there.
Yes, certificates are here, and all these information of the certifications, bankruptcies, anything that could come into the information of the company,
right,
is here, which is fantastic. As a user, as some company that wanted to come buy, for example, from our company, they would go to ERAI as a member, and they can find the credibility of what we have, the processes in play. Because a lot of people try to sell and try to say something that's not real. They can say, "Oh, we all have the certifications. It's authorized. We have, no in alerts. We have no issues. We do have global operations. So these are all for, as a user, is honestly it's very valuable information to even add to be a qualified supplier in an approved vendor list to purchase from."
I agree. If you don't mind, to the left, if you would hit company search, right there, right under, okay. And then right underneath that is recent company alerts.
Yes. Recent company.
Recent company alerts, further down.
Recent company, there it is.
Right there. So that is just a listing of the companies reported to us in the order that we've received them. And if you scroll through there, and again, it's kind of small on my screen, but you'll see all these entity list editions, that is the United States denied parties list.
Oh, wow.
And we update that periodically. We have access to that through the web page. And if you scroll through, you'll see a long list of wire frauds, suspect counterfeits. Go to page 2. There are many wire fraud alerts.
Yep, frauds. Here are all your frauds. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of frauds in here. All the information, and even misrepresentation of ERAI membership.
Right. That's a big one in some parts of the world. And to counter that, people can go to the website and request to confirm or verify an ERAI member status. Many ERAI members will use the ERAI smart logo. And if you would go to the top, or actually back to the home page, and I don't know if you're doing this or you're not, go to profile to the right.
To the right, up here, profile down.
And scroll down.
Smart logo.
We want to go scroll down through that list to smart logo, ERAI smart logo. Now, if you scroll through there, those are the strings that you can add. And then if you continue down, it'll show you the examples of the logos. ERAI members can embed these smart logos in their email signatures or any of their digital communications, their line cards, what have you. And then any of your customers can click on that. And if you're an ERAI member, it'll reach out to our website and confirm right away that you're a member. And that's one of the things we came up with to counter the misrepresentation of the ERAI logo. In addition to that, anyone can request through the website whether or not a company who's claimed to be an ERAI member is in fact an ERAI member.
Yeah, I mean, one other great thing that I want to recommend you could discuss a little bit about is the search here. 1 second, is the recent part alerts and recent part search. That's for members that they can see what is really going on in the marketplace and what's going on. Well, this is really good information as a professional buyer.
We agree, and those recent part alerts coincide with our email alerts. So an ERAI member can request our email alerts every time a part is added to our database is either counterfeit or non-conforming. You can elect to receive them or not receive them at all, or you can receive them real time in the order that they are released, or you can receive them in a daily or weekly summary. So we give you a lot of flexibility over controlling your inbox, basically.
Yeah, and
because sometimes it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information, and you can always go to as you have the recent part alerts and see what was reported to us in the order that we've received them.
Yeah, and I can say as a user how valuable and how detailed most of your information is to validate what's going on, how it happened. You even put test reports in there. You put information in there to validate what happened, suspicious counterfeit, failure, whatever's going, failure analysis, whatever would happen. And as a buyer or a supply quality, SQE, supplier quality engineer, anybody that's going through these can really understand the detail and how you guys have really quantified this to help mitigate all these disruptions and the fraud and the counterfeit in the marketplace.
It's really good information. And if you were looking for this part, it's wise to punch it in and see if it's been reported before. Having that information can help you direct your questions when you're out quoting that with other suppliers. If you scroll down, in this case, there's a third-party test report added. In many cases, there are discrete digital images. But if you were to look at that test report, all the photos of the part received before any testing has been done would be in there for identification purposes. And then there'll be digital images supporting the claim that the part is counterfeit or the findings. Yep. And many of my manufacturing members, they take this information and they will even take these images. You're just about to see some, and they will use these for their quality control guys and incoming inspectors.
Yeah.
But many of my manufacturing members, once they know they're buying and using a part that's been reported as counterfeit, they'll use these images to even train their production floor workers. It's sort of a last line of defense to keep this bad product out of their product.
Yeah, I mean, this is excellent work. It's extremely valuable to the professional buyer and to the engineers and to everybody. And I cannot say, that's why I want to promote this as much as I can, because right, especially today, we are all need to learn. The new generation coming in, educate, resource everything that ERAI does for the supply chain for electronics distribution and manufacturing industry.
Well, I appreciate you, Rob, and we certainly appreciate all of our members, the longtime guys like IBS and the new people that are coming to us recently. And I'm pretty busy doing demos and showing people and quoting people and getting them on board using the tools, the databases and search tools. And we do this to help protect the industry. And we are longtime industry people here at ERAI, and we think what we do is good work.
Yeah, no, as it's the police. You guys are the policing, and the work that's done. It has done wonders and saved millions and millions of dollars to a lot of your users and a lot of the people in the industry. Another question I have for you is what is for the future, what you see in the next year to 2 years? How is ERAI evolving and advancing your guys' systems for the future growth and to be able to mitigate even more as these type of counterfeits or frauds are getting even more complex?
Well, we have always paid attention to our member base, and a lot of the things that we've added over the years have come as suggestions from our members. We are covering these various infractions. There's an area in the advanced company search tool that lists them all. And wire fraud is just one of the many things that we report on. We report on financial problems, overdue invoices, counterfeiting. We are aware of and attuned to the cloning activity and how counterfeits have changed over time. There are many, many things that we track and report on to our member base. Search tools, we have one in there. It's our nonconformance photo library. And we developed this for a member some time ago and just decided to add it to our suite of tools. And the people that like this tool are life cycle guys, failure analysis guys, some of the actuary types. But what it does, it allows you to look at a particular nonconformance across many different types of devices. And the company we built this for, they, through an X-ray inspection, discovered broken or missing bond wires. And they were trying to determine, were they buying the parts with broken bond wires? Was it their manufacturing process? Or was it, as it turned out, the extremely harsh and rugged environment their customer was using their product in? But by setting up those three things and hitting search, it generates a digital photo array of every part in our database that shares that nonconformance, and you can do your comparisons. So ERAI is involved in keeping up to date on the barcoding and packaging and label issues that are going on right now. So we will always listen to our members and find the best way to respond and help develop some sort of best practices. We have staff here that have always been involved in the G19 committees and others that have helped to write the various standards that are affecting us all now. So we're pretty entrenched in very many or various portions of the supply chain in getting feedback and coming up with best practices.
I cannot elaborate more than how much that means right now, especially with the whole of media. And I think the media today, I think as I speak for myself, a lot of others, like and yourselves, like the media has really brought the supply chain world to the masses to understand what supply chain is,
Right.
how components in the world are affecting. Because at the end of the day, everybody used to ask me, I always joke around, what do you do? We're in electronic distribution. Oh, do you sell computers? You sell iPhones? So it's hard to understand. So now it's actually quantified to make it easier for people to understand that supply chain is so critical, especially in electronics. And people know consumer goods get counterfeited. There's a lot of counterfeit goods, and a lot of it derives from the Asian region that people know. They hear every month there's a big seizure of a finished good or something counterfeit or handbags. But it's in I would say every different commodity, there is that counterfeit.
Absolutely. There's a Wall Street Journal article that came out just today talking about the electronic supply chain and counterfeits.
Yeah.
I've only gotten halfway through it, and then I tuned into you.
Oh, no. Well, thank you. But no, it really enlightens, and I am happy. As much as there is a lot of unfortunate because of business and inflation has caused because of the component costs have increased, the raw materials, supply chain, logistics, overall, but it's brought it much more to light. And I think there'll be a lot more expertise moving ahead in this industry because a lot more eyes and information out there. And companies like yourself and a lot of other organizations that are part of it are going to bring this new generation to understand supply chain and really quantify this to make sure that we can mitigate these type of massive of disruptions that we have from the pandemic or a cycle or supply chain break or fires, natural disasters. We have a lot of that out there.
You bring up a very good point, and I think, and you and I, as long timers in this business, when I was an international guy, I probably trained 250 people in the last 8 or 9 years of my career. And you try to instill in them, the best practices that you and I have learned coming up through this business. And we need to share that with the new people. And I'm reminded, when I got in this business, I was 20 years old. And I was taught by, at the time, some of the greatest guys in this industry, and they passed things down to me. And I think we need to do that. And that brings up, again, the importance of sharing our experience with the new people, and for the industry at large to share and report their experiences. Now, these part reports and incident reports that you've looked at, these are done anonymously. You can report a part number to us or a problem you had with a company to us, and no one would ever know that it came from you. And the industry as a whole benefits knowing that the bad actors and the bad product is out there. And I encourage people to share that information. Go to the ERAI.com website. It's very easy to do. You do not have to be an ERAI member to report a product, counterfeit or non-conforming, or a problem with a vendor. Even if you're not an ERAI member, many cases we're able to help resolve an issue you have with a company. And frankly, that has driven a lot of companies to become ERAI members because they see what we've done with dispute resolution. We have members in 40 countries now, and we just will continue to spread the word around the world within the global electronic supply chain.
Yeah, I cannot thank you enough for helping us in the business that we're in and many thousands of other companies like ourselves, distribution manufacturing, for helping us that. And it's just as a sharing. At the end of the day, it's sharing knowledge, staying curious, keep sharing it to them. I mean, you already answered my questions for sharing knowledge to the new generation. That's always the thing that I was going to ask you is what do you think the new generation is like? Sharing your knowledge and wisdom down to them, for them to understand and come in prepared to not just start from the beginning, but start from that point you left off to build on top of that.
I agree.
Well, thank you again. Any final words, Richard?
Well, I think everyone just has to kind of focus on the task at hand. It is challenging. We're all facing challenges. We all have to kind of remember what this is really all about. At the end of the day, everyone wants to go home with their family, but we go out and we slug it out every day to overcome the challenges that the supply chain chaos is bringing us. And we've been doing it for decades, and we'll continue to do it. And we just have to focus, help each other out, and press on.
I love it. Thank you so much for those great words, inspiring. And as I always say, staying curious and being smart, be thoughtful, be generous to everybody out there. And thanks again, guys, for listening. And thank you, Richard, and the ERAI team for everything that you do. And I hope to collaborate with you and see you in person sometime soon.
Absolutely. Good to see you again, Rob. I really appreciate this. I'm happy to do it. Have a great day.